Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on a Monday night, a dramatic Monday night, an incredible Monday night as far as news is concerned. It has been a hectic day. We are going to parse through all of the Derrick Henry stuff with you over the course of the next hour or so on the Primetime Show. We're looking forward to having your participation as a part of the proceedings as well, of course, on Facebook, YouTube, and on Twitch. We'll spend some time on Derrick Henry. We'll talk about how the Titans have to survive without him. We'll even spend some time on the Von Miller trade, given that he's headed to the Los Angeles Rams, the Tennessee Titans' next opponent, unfortunately, for those of you watching at home, and for Ryan Tannehill. A lot to discuss on this Monday night edition back in Nashville after a successful trip to the Titans, or for the Titans, in Indianapolis, and things have very, very quickly spiraled. We'll spend some time on that over the course of this evening's show, and we welcome you and invite you guys to share this show around on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. If you are hanging out with us on Facebook Live, share now to public. It's in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. If you are on YouTube or on Twitch with us, please subscribe to the A to Z Sports channel, throw us a like, and make sure that you tell your friends that we're hanging out here live streaming Sunday through Thursday night. Now that more of you are here, and as Monday Night Football nears halftime, we'll go ahead and get things going officially. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the DraftKings Sportsbook Studios. I'm your host, Buck Rising. I'm proud, as always, to be presented to you from the fine folks at Two Rivers Ford. Two Rivers Ford, since 1983, they have been providing you award-winning customer service. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. Of course, DraftKings Sportsbook, promo code A to Z Sports gets you in on all the action, and I'll tell you more about it, what they have for you regarding Week 9 in the NFL later on in the show. Just plug in that promo code A to Z Sports and start making money today. The Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage will help you make money. In fact, help you sell your home for more at GaryAshton.com. Among the many great things that they do, courtesy of the Ashton team. We'll get to that later on. And of course, Brymak Mechanical, who will put you in your comfort zone with satisfaction guaranteed on all of your HVAC needs. BRYMAK, Brymak.com. So, a lot of moving parts. A lot of moving parts for the Tennessee Titans today. And unfortunately, some of those moving parts are in Derrick Henry's foot. So if you're unfamiliar, as Apollo Dyson asks, what's the actual injury to Derrick? The actual injury to Derrick is a broken bone in his foot. It is the fifth metatarsal bone, which was described to me by my radio producer's girlfriend, who's in med school, as a tubular bone that connects your foot to your pinky toe. So it runs along the side of your foot there. And the most impressive thing about Derrick Henry, not only did they beat the Indianapolis Colts, but that man kept going for basically 20-plus carries after he had broken his foot. It's crazy to see how that happened and the fact that he was sustained. But now he's officially on injured reserve. Derrick Henry will be unavailable to the Tennessee Titans for at least, according to Ian Rappaport, 6 to 10 weeks. And that's conflicting reports, basically, because Adam Schefter was on Monday Night Football's pregame show and maintains that Derrick Henry may be done for the season. So conflicting reports as far as that are concerned. And if you listen to my radio show today, that was moving parts. That was such a wrong way to put it, Buck, says Deion Bonner. Yeah, I thought it was a funny joke. But you're probably not in the joking mood, given that Derrick Henry's not going to play for you probably during the regular season. So Adam Schefter is saying full season. Ian Rappaport is saying 6 to 10 weeks. What I heard last night, because I got a phone call about this, and just to kind of fill you in on the reporting that I did, I got called after I got back to my hotel in Indianapolis last night after the game. It's probably about 8. No, it would have been like 7:57, basically, because I was right about to pop on to primetime, which was, stressful for me because I wanted to dig more on information. But I got this call from a reputable source saying, yeah, the Titans believe Derrick Henry's probably done for the year. And that was before he had the MRI. Now, what has allowed Ian Rappaport to say that 6 to 10 week timeline is the fact that he did have an MRI today and will have surgery according to Mike Vrabel, tomorrow. But when we asked Mike about this, there was a couple of things that come up. He can technically be back in 3 weeks as Cincinnati Titan, yeah, but he's not going to be back in 3 weeks. So go ahead and why even put that in the chat? Like, what's the purpose of that? You know that it's a broken foot and that you're not going to get a running back with a broken foot back in 3 weeks. Or if you do, you don't want anything to do with him out on the field. That's just a ridiculous statement. Why even bring that up? Anyway, the Two Rivers Ford take that we'll start with here on A to Z Sports Prime Time. One word to describe your emotions after you heard about the Titans losing Derrick Henry. Producer Reed, if we can make sure that we clean up the grammar on the way that the title is phrased. Your Two Rivers Ford take. One word to describe your emotions after hearing about the Titans losing Derrick Henry. Let me know on Facebook, YouTube, and on Twitch. We'll talk about it together on A to Z Sports Prime Time right after I tell you about our friends. And you'll hear from head coach Mike Vrabel, who spoke to the media at St. Thomas Sports Park today. One word to describe your emotions after you got the Derrick Henry news. Coming off a big win in Indianapolis. It's a shame. I mean, we talked about the game last night, but I didn't hardly talk about the game at all today for 3 hours on radio. So you understand that it's the biggest story in sports until Von Miller got traded to the Rams, your next opponent, who we'll talk about at the end of the show. You'll hear from Mike Vrabel momentarily right after I tell you about Two Rivers Ford. The best in the business is Two Rivers Ford, and they've announced the Built For You program, which ensures that if you go visit them in Mount Juliet and you don't see the exact Ford vehicle on the lot that you desire, Two Rivers Ford will ensure that you get the vehicle of your choosing, because you can customize any Ford model, any color, any customizable features. They will physically build the car for you and then deliver it directly to your door. It's why Two Rivers Ford is the best and one of the most trusted brand names in the state of Tennessee. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet, or online at tworiversford.com. So, one word to describe your emotions when you heard the Derrick Henry news. Adam Schefter breaking it first. All I did was confirm it today, and then you saw both Jay Glazer and Ian Rappaport get in on the conversation, advancing the story. Depressed for Jeff Charles. Shocked for Octavius on YouTube. Rich Dolphinius, forgive me, Rich, if I've mispronounced your last name. He just says sick. There's a lot of emotions flying around, and Mike Vrabel, I'm sure, experienced a fair amount of them. When we talked to Mike today about whether they got any indication that they needed to shut Derrick Henry down in that game instead of giving him, I think he had 26 carries, which is still so crazy to say. Let me double check. Yeah, 28 carries. He averaged 2.4 yards per attempt. He was clearly struggling, and so we asked the head coach, "Hey, if it happened during the first quarter, why'd you let him keep going?"
Any discussion of shutting him down at a point?
There was, I think there was internally in my mind. I mean, I check with obviously the medical staff. I check with the player, and in this case, check with Derrick. And I'm going to give him a little bit of leeway. I think he's earned the right to help me make that decision. Like we always do on his rest and recovery, and certain situations that him and I have had over the course of the time together, whether that was to sit him for a game against the Saints or allow him to go back out there against the Texans or whatever it may be. And it felt like at that time, and listening to Derrick and the medical staff, that he would be okay being out there. So that's kind of where I was, and it did, and we tried to spell him a little bit, with some other guys, and it's kind of how it went.
So that's Titans head coach Mike Vrabel speaking with the media today, and basically saying, yeah, listen, we talked to our training staff, and I asked Derrick, and Derrick told me he was good to go. And at that particular opportunity, they didn't call for an MRI, so Mike Vrabel said that Derrick Henry has earned that trust to be able to make some of those decisions. Here's what I'll say about Derrick Henry, man. He is one tough son of a gun, and speedy recovery, and thoughts to him and to his family. I'm sure it's a tough time, because we all know how hard that dude works, and this has got to be a devastating blow given the pace that he was on and the fact that he fought through that game. Completely untenable. But one word to describe your emotions. Mike Vrabel, it's a tough spot that he was put in. And I think, given retrospect, obviously it's tough. I respect Mike Vrabel's decision on that, even if it ended up being worse than any of us could have imagined. Now, I heard last night, just to kind of further the reporting on this. I'll tell you that when I got this call last night, I started digging around a little more in the post-game press conference because neither Tannehill or Derrick, they took about a half hour to even bring Tannehill out after the last player spoke. Talked to like 5 or 6 players last night and Mike Vrabel, then a 30-minute gap because they were trying to get Tannehill and Henry through treatment and get them okay enough to get on the podium. Tannehill was able to do it. He was clearly experiencing discomfort. He told us it was a neck injury. That's a situation to monitor as the season goes along, because I think you can survive without Derrick, but to lose your starting quarterback without Derrick Henry would be catastrophic. Your season would tank. So that was the moment where I found out. I texted their PR staff and I said, "Hey, is Derrick not coming out tonight?" And they were like, "No, he's going to take a rain check. He's currently experiencing treatment. He's going to catch up with you guys on Thursday." And now he is not going to catch up with us on Thursday because he's on IR, and injured players don't talk to the media. So Derrick Henry, we will not hear or see him for quite some time. Regarding Derrick Henry's situation, though, one word to describe it is survivable. And I think that there is going to be a lot of doom and gloom today, rightfully so. He's an MVP candidate. He's the most beloved player on the football team. He's the face of the franchise. Derrick Henry is everything that is the Tennessee Titans, right? Hardworking, great effort, strong finish, MVP, leading rusher, leading scorer. Like, this dude is the most unstoppable force in all of the NFL. And ultimately what it comes down to is I think that they can still survive this because of, now, if you're talking about Super Bowl, it's a different conversation. I'm talking about keeping their season afloat. I'm not talking about Super Bowl. I have no idea what they're going to do when they get into the postseason. But they can still get into the postseason because they got a 3-game lead in their division. The 3 games left in their division are against the Jags, 1 game against the Jags, and 2 at the end of the year against the Texans. They may get pushed around on Sunday Night Football. It may be a bad showing. I may be flying out to Los Angeles on Saturday to see them get their asses kicked. And ultimately, it's just going to come down to the fact that they're having to learn how to live life without Derrick Henry. And at this point, it may be survivable. You saw that they put Adrian Peterson on their practice squad today. They will inevitably call him up. I don't think that they're done as far as that position is concerned. But remember that Darrington Evans is also on injured reserve. So neither of your running backs, your top 2 running back, even though I wouldn't call Darrington Evans a top 2 running back because that's Jeremy McNichol's job. But you're in a bad spot, and your starter, in all likelihood, is 36 years old and coming off a season where he averaged 9.8 attempts per game. 9.8 attempts per game for the Detroit Lions last year. Now, he had a pretty good season. He had 700 total yards. He had 7 touchdowns. Adrian Peterson, even at this advanced age, is no slouch, but 9.8 attempts per game for Adrian Peterson last year. Can anybody take a guess how many attempts Derrick Henry averages per game? Go ahead. I'll give you a minute. Go ahead and guess how many attempts Derrick Henry averages per game. And while you do that, I'll tell you about our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. America's top-rated sportsbook app is DraftKings Sportsbook, and they are offering you the opportunity to get in on all the action using the promo code A2Z Sports. DraftKings Sportsbook is the best in the business for a great many reasons. First and foremost, because they have offers for you, such as what they are putting out in Week 9 of the NFL season. What DraftKings Sportsbook is offering to you is this. They are getting football fans who are ready to score some free bets in on the action with promo code A2Z Sports. Now, when you bet on any NFL game this week with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, new customers who bet just $1 on either team to score can win $100 in free bets. When a team scores, you score. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code A2Z Bet just $1 on either team to score and win $100 in free bets if they score. You score with promo code A2Z this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older, present in Tennessee to bet. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. So go ahead and guess, and I'm sure somebody's looked it up by now. And while I was telling you about DraftKings, how many attempts that Derrick Henry is averaging per game. Eddie says 33. Demetrius says 30, but feels like 50. 23 attempts for Abdul. John Spain Howard says 28. Derrick Henry is currently on the season averaging 27.4 carries per game. And that's not even counting catches because he has a bunch of those this season too. Derrick Henry is responsible for 80% of the Titans' rushing yards. 80%. It's an outrageous amount for one player to produce for their offense. 27.7 attempts per game is what Derrick Henry averages. Adrian Peterson's career high with the 2008 Minnesota Vikings, 22.7. It's nowhere close. So you're going to have to fundamentally change the style of football that you have. You're going to have to pass the ball a hell of a lot more. And with this offensive line, it does not necessarily sound like a safe bet. The word that I would describe the word that I would describe this Derrick Henry situation as is survivable. But again, this all is dependent on Ryan Tannehill being okay. And we'll have to wait until Wednesday to see an actual injury report. But I don't know. I don't know that, at least after what I saw him look like last night in Indy, I don't know that he's going to be flat out okay. We will see. Can K-Baby come off IR this week to play, says Donovan Romaine? I assume you're talking about Christian Fulton. He is officially eligible to return to practice, and then they'll have a 21-day window to activate him. But I will tell you that Christian Fulton is officially, he can officially return to the active roster because he has sat out 3 games. What one word describes your emotions when you heard the Derrick Henry news? Let me know on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. No more MVP talk. Buck, what would you do at running back, says William Young? I wouldn't do anything at running back. I'd find another wide receiver. I'd throw the ball 40 times a game if I had to. I would run a bunch of empty sets. I would get the ball out of Tannehill's hands as quick as humanly possible. Damn the running back. I don't care if it's not Derrick. Derrick Henry's a 2,000-yard running back and a 1,500-yard offense. I said that on the radio today, and it is flat out true. Nobody is going to be able to do in the Titans offense what Derrick Henry did. Doesn't matter who they are. Doesn't matter if it's Adrian Peterson in his prime. Maybe Adrian Peterson in his prime. But Derrick Henry is not replaceable, so don't try and replace him. Find different ways to win. Don't give up on your running game, but adjust as a result, because at this point, I just don't think that they can do it the same way that they've been doing it. It's going to be incumbent upon Todd Downing to change his plan. So with that being said, let's talk about who is under the most pressure to perform without Derrick Henry. Let me know on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. We'll discuss it together on A to Z Sports Prime Time on this Monday night. Who is under the most pressure to perform in Derrick Henry's absence? We'll talk about it together right after I tell you about the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage at GaryAshton.com. Your dream address without the stress is where you go to. That is what the Ashton team will offer you. They will also offer you the opportunity to sell your home for more, because the Ashton team has the best intel and the best properties in Middle Tennessee. GaryAshton.com is the website, the official real estate agent of the Tennessee Titans, the Nashville Predators, and A to Z Sports Prime Time. I got my dream address without the stress. Using Gary and his team, the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage, the best in the business at GaryAshton.com. So what is the situation for the Tennessee Titans? Who is under the most pressure to step up in his absence without Derrick Henry for the foreseeable future. We won't put a timeline on it because Mike Vrabel refuses to as well, and I just don't think it's productive because you got Adam Schefter saying whole season, you got Ian Rappaport putting out there 6 to 10 weeks. I don't know. I haven't gotten confirmation on that. I mean, well, my sources last night told me they believed it to be season ending, but that was I haven't been able to get anybody to confirm any kind of timeline after that since he had the MRI this morning, and then again he'll have surgery tomorrow. So a situation to monitor into the coming weeks. Jeff Charles says Ryan Tannehill needs to step up. Chris Frazier agrees, as does Jeffrey Benson, Cameron Massey, and Andrew Frill. Michael Jones says Julio Jones, so the cousin of Michael, Julio needs to step up. It is going to be fascinating because what Rappaport was saying today, and he was all over this after Adam Schefter put out the initial report, there's no telling how long it could be. There are some optimistic projections. There are also some that leave you scratching your head. But what we know at this point is that he's had an MRI and it's a Jones fracture. A running back with a foot injury is a scary proposition.
No, it is not good for Derrick Henry, the MVP candidate who seemed primed to make a run at the NFL's all-time single-season rushing record, is going to have surgery tomorrow morning to repair the 5th metatarsal in his foot. Essentially, a broken bone in his foot. Jones fracture is what this is called. As far as the timeline goes, here's what I'm told. Derrick Henry is out at least 6 weeks. Probably a better ballpark is 8 weeks. Now, this recovery can take up to 10 weeks. So what does that mean? It means if the Tennessee Titans, who do seem to have a firm grasp on the division, if they make the playoffs, there is a realistic chance that their superstar Derrick Henry will be able to play. In fact, that is exactly what the Titans are holding out hope for. Meanwhile, they brought in some reinforcements. So from a potential MVP candidate to a future Hall of Famer, Adrian Peterson has signed, I'm told, with the Tennessee Titans. He worked out there today. He's first going to start on the practice squad, then get elevated to the game day roster. If you're going to lose an MVP candidate, replacing him with a Hall of Famer, one of the best to ever do it, not a terrible way to do it.
So that's Rap Sheet with the latest on both Adrian Peterson and Derrick Henry. Dion just says, bring back Lendale White. And I would say to you that no, nobody is bringing back Lendale White. Everybody relax. Remain calm at this point. Is AP still good, says Ben? You know, I mean, he's 36 years old. So what qualifies as good at 36? I think he's good for I think he's great for 36. But I think stylistically, he does a lot of the same things that Derrick Henry does. In fact, probably the most modern day comparison to Derrick is prime Adrian Peterson, right? So you're looking at a lot of the same things that Derrick does, but in a player who's 10 years older than Derrick at this point. I mean, Adrian Peterson and Mike Vrabel were both Pro Bowlers in 2007. Think about that. All right, Adrian Peterson been in the league a long time. Adrian Peterson was taking NFL carries when Chris Johnson was still in college. It's crazy the way that this is year 15 for Adrian Peterson. He's a damn running back. MB says, didn't we see Adrian Peterson last year? Yes, the Titans did play Adrian Peterson and the Detroit Lions because he did play for the Detroit Lions. Noah Tedeschi, and I'll answer this once because I get this question a lot, and it's kind of like the Mason Kinsey thing for me. So I answered it once on the radio. I'll do it once on the primetime show, and then let's never talk about it again. Because Noah Tedeschi, forgive me, Noah, if I've mispronounced your last name, says, hey, Buck, do you think Sargent will get some carries? Mekhi Sargent is a practice squad player at best. I know that you guys like what he did in the preseason, but they're not using Mekhi Sargent the same reason that they're not using Mason Kinsey, because they're not good enough and they're not special in really any way. They're high effort. They're high energy. You respect them for that. They've made it to the professional ranks, and to Mason Kinsey's credit, he's been on an active roster. And please don't mistake this for me dumping on two guys who are fringe roster players. And Mekhi Sargent, to his credit, did make the roster at the start of the year with Darrington Evans on IR. But I mean, these two aren't good enough. And just talking about Sargent's not good enough to help you. I mean, I think in the last preseason game, what was that, against the Bears. I would have to pull up the game logs from it, but it's not like Mekhi Sargent was making big plays in the preseason. He just ran with a lot of effort. That's something that Mike Vrabel told us about him in training camp, that they had to like back him off during practice because he goes too hard, which is a great quality. And please, again, this is not a personal attack on Mekhi Sargent. And it doesn't mean that he will get 0 carries now that their running back situation is in flux. But Mekhi Sargent isn't the answer. And from that standpoint, I would just say to you, lower your expectations for what Mekhi Sargent is, because there is in no circumstance. Hell, Jeremy McNichols isn't enough to replace Derrick Henry. Adrian Peterson isn't enough to replace Derrick Henry. Now, maybe the three of them, and they've added Dontrell Hilliard, who was on the roster yesterday as a returner, who's also a running back by trade, but more a returner than anything. Which, again, with Dontrell Hilliard on the active roster yesterday, that eliminates the need for Sargent on special teams. So he's been kind of ousted in that regard as well. So just I would tell you, for what can legitimately help your football team right now, do not include Mekhi Sargent as a part of the conversation. He's there. If he's active on game day, he will be expected to play, but this is not a player who's going to make legitimate impact for your football team. So from that standpoint, I mean, who needs to step up the most? Because I saw Julio, I saw Tannehill, but honestly, my answer is Todd Downing. I think that Todd Downing is going to have to change. This offense fundamentally changes without Derrick. That maybe, and Mike Vrabel said that they were planning on keeping their same, offense. They're not going to completely change their offense. And I'm not saying that they would or that they should, but I will say to you, about Todd Downing, he has to find ways to adjust the playbook to not let this offense just die when Derrick Henry isn't out there, to create open play action passing windows, to allow for the threat of Derrick Henry to break the big one, and then Ryan Tannehill boots out because the defense sells out to stop Derrick, and Ryan Tannehill can run for 13 yards with his legs. This is a circumstance for Ryan Tannehill that you have to, or for Derrick Henry, that we've seen Todd Downing adjust to his unavailable personnel before with varying degrees of success, right? They did drop the Jets game because they couldn't physically have been more injured than they ended up being. But from the standpoint of who needs to step up the most, it's Todd Downing at this point, and I don't think it's necessarily close. Could be a faster-paced offense, says Alejandro. Well, I mean, Alex, they're running the third most plays in football per game. I just looked this up, in fact, because I'm writing about this more in detail about how the offense is going to change. Only the Dallas Cowboys and Buffalo run more plays than the Titans. Dallas averages 69.7, Buffalo 69.3. The Titans are third, tied for third with Minnesota at 68.6. I mean, the Titans, it's not necessarily tempo because they played 3 overtime games. So that number is definitely skewed by the amount. They've had more possessions than a lot of other teams. So it's not like their pace of play is ramped up. But they're running a ton of plays already. They're running a ton of plays. And I think that the game plan itself, they have to stick with what they do well because the team is built a certain way. But there are also ways that you can adapt your offense to the personnel that you have available to you, or more importantly, for who is not available to you. And who is not available at this juncture is one Derrick Henry. So let's wrap this show up and talk about the Los Angeles Rams on Sunday Night Football. I'm getting ready to fly out to LA on Saturday, and they've done more improbable things, but for them to beat the Rams, who just traded for Von Miller, I don't know how you beat them. But we'll find out on Sunday Night Football in prime time. With that being said, Von Miller did get traded to the Los Angeles Rams today. So the question that I want to ask you guys is, understanding what's happening with Ryan Tannehill, would you play him against the Rams? Let me know on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch regarding the Titans quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. Would you play him in Los Angeles going against Von Miller, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, without Derrick Henry at his disposal? And the threat of a rushing attack? Give me your answers on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. We will talk about it together here in just a second, right after I tell you about Brymak Mechanical, BRYMAK, Brymak.com. Satisfaction guaranteed on all of your HVAC needs is what Brymak offers you. 3 locations in Tennessee and in Kentucky to make sure that they can get a wide range of people who require their assistance. Assistance commercially, assistance residentially. Whatever the HVAC project that you have or work that you require, visit our friends at one of their 3 locations at Brymak Mechanical or Brymak.com. Would you play Tannehill in Los Angeles this weekend? As we sit here today. Now, what I'll say to you is I'll preface it by this. We don't know enough about Ryan Tannehill. All we know is that he was having trouble moving yesterday and he hurt his neck and he had to come out for a play. And Logan Woodside went in regulation, took a knee, sent it to overtime. Ryan Tannehill gutted it the hell out. He and Derrick Henry showed some remarkable toughness to finish that overtime football game yesterday. But this game seems fairly, they're not going to go out there and say, yeah, we should rest him because we don't have a chance to win. That's not going to be Mike Vrabel's approach. It's not how they coach their football team. But if he's not as close to 100% healthy as humanly possible, would you throw him out there? Because, guys who aren't very good, like Dante Fowler had 11 sacks working next to Aaron Donald. What's Von Miller going to do? You know what I'm saying? And so do you trust that offensive line to keep him upright? Brandon Roberts says you play to win the game, and that's true. If Ryan Tannehill can go, let him go. But if there's even remotely a doubt that he is going to be physically prepared to take what is probably going to be a beating in front of a nationally televised, and it doesn't matter that it's nationally televised, but that he may get his ass kicked out there. Do you want to risk that, given that it's an important game? Every game is an important game, but this is of less importance because it's a non-conference game and because the Colts, who you would need to hold down for the division, they lost to the Rams. So if you lose to the Rams too, it doesn't affect you as far as tiebreak. Now, if you beat the Rams somehow, then you have another tiebreaker over the Colts if they make any kind of a push because their schedule is soft. So there are reasons to play Tannehill and to try, obviously, to win this football game, but it is difficult to imagine. Now, it's not improbable. We've seen stranger things. What about Stafford getting his ass kicked, says Big Man White. Yeah, listen, the defense is real. The defense gives them a chance. And that's not something you could say last year. Puka says Tannehill already has injured his neck. She would not play him. Joseph Otis Cirilio says, if you're scared, go to church. Well, it's not about being scared. It's about being smart, Joseph. It doesn't, does Ryan Tannehill look scared to you when he's playing that game with a neck injury in overtime? Did Derrick Henry look scared to you when he's taking 28 carries with a broken foot? Like, it's just dumb to look at it that way. These are professional football players. They're not scared. You're a fool if you think that there's fear in those two guys. But as far as Ryan Tannehill is concerned, the defense gives them a chance. And Matt Stafford is going to be under some pressure, and it's not a great offensive line in Los Angeles, but they can bury you and it can snowball quickly. And then when you're chasing in a game and the defense knows that you have to throw the ball, you sound scared is what I meant to Joseph. Well, what does it matter if I'm scared? I'm scared because it's football and he's got a neck injury. I don't want him to have some kind of lasting issue just on a personal human level. Again, we've talked about this a million times. I'm a reporter. I'm a media person. I'm a talk show host. It doesn't matter to them whether they lose or win. In fact, Derrick Henry being done potentially for the regular season is going to be the biggest numbers that I have all week. And that sucks because that's the nature of, that's how you guys interact with stuff. When shit goes bad, you guys watch and read more. It's wild to me, but that's the nature of the game. So I'm not scared about whether they win or they lose. I don't care whether they win or they lose, but I'm scared for Ryan Tannehill, who looked like he got just wrecked on that final play. And the way that he was moving yesterday is enough to scare me. Sure, it's a neck injury in football. Ryan Shazier has lost his entire career on plays that look much less violent than that. And I'm sure many of you remember the Ryan Shazier experience, also with a neck injury in football. Now, we don't know the severity. We just know that he was moving very, very slowly and gingerly yesterday. If he's good enough to play him. If he's even the slightest bit questionable, I don't know that I'd put him out there. I'd see what Logan Woodside can do and see if your defense can't limit that Rams offense as far as possessions are concerned. It's a tough task, but, such is life. And then there's Von Miller, who is going to be trying to chew on the back of whomever the quarterback is in that game, because Von Miller got traded to the Rams today. God help whichever quarterback for whichever team the Rams play the rest of the season.
Sean McVay, the Rams head coach, said a couple of weeks ago he didn't really see the team making any big waves before the trade deadline. So he was asked a couple of minutes ago about those comments. What would you have thought? Would have said, no way. He said it not in his nice way, but anyway, that was the gist of it. He did not see this coming. I don't think a lot of people saw this coming. Here is how it broke down for the Los Angeles Rams to acquire the future Hall of Famer Von Miller. Now, remember, the Rams and the Broncos made a trade for a linebacker a couple weeks ago. At that point, they touched base and said, what if Von Miller was the next one to go? Then on Friday, they basically had a soft framework for a deal, what it would actually take, and it ended up being a second rounder and a third rounder, real legitimate assets going from the Rams, who love to trade draft picks, to the Broncos. Broncos also paying the bulk of Von Miller's salary. Then they got through this weekend, and of course Von Miller did not play because of his ankle, and they informed him yesterday night, I believe, that a trade might be happening, that something could be going on. They finalized it today, and this is what we know. The Los Angeles Rams front seven got a lot better, and the Denver Broncos said goodbye to a franchise legend, but got some draft picks for the
So for the Titans at this point, it's going to be a tough task. And like I said, if he's healthy, get him out there. Go try and win the football game. This gives you an extra leg over the Colts, and your ultimate goal is to try and win the division. The NFC West is playing the AFC South this year. The Colts have already lost to the Rams. If you can beat the Rams, if you go 4-0 through this stretch, they deserve all the credit in the world. I'm currently, speaking of AFC teams, I'm currently watching Josh Allen on the Manning cast in this Chiefs-Giants game. But there's a lot to Dustin Honeycutt says, bro, you must have a man crush on Von Miller. You've mentioned him 30 times today. He probably won't even play Sunday. Well, Dustin, if you want to sound like an idiot, let me go ahead and inform you. Von Miller is one of the greatest defensive players in the history of the sport. Von Miller almost single-handedly won a Super Bowl with a broken Peyton Manning on his back. Von Miller is, in fact, expected to play on Sunday because I follow a lot, because it is Rams week. I've been paying attention to what Rams beat writers are tweeting and writing. They had a press conference with Sean McVay after this trade was concluded earlier this evening before the game began. And Sean McVay said their expectation is for Von Miller to play on Sunday. So there's a variety of different ways in which you just exposed your ignorance. And if I'm going to mention one of the greatest defensive players that I've ever seen in my lifetime, and probably one of the best ones that you've ever seen in yours, yeah, I think 30 times is reasonable to mention him, given the fact that you play him this week. Don't be so thick, and don't get caught up in your homerism. Cry somewhere else about that crap. Man crush on Von Miller. No, I'm talking about the football game. You don't want to talk about the football game? Go somewhere else. That's all I'm going to tell you. Let's wrap things up on that note, because I've got a lot more work to do, and there's a lot more reporting that needs to be done around this Derrick Henry situation. It's going to be a long night, boys and girls, but it's been a lot of fun. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We will be back on primetime tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central Time or thereabouts. And, of course, the radio show from 10 to 1 on 104.5 The Zone tomorrow as well. We will continue to react to this, and we will see what new information is provided to you. I'm planning on Titans assistant coaches are going to speak to the media. I think it might be defensive assistant coaches tomorrow, which would be unfortunate because I'd really like to talk to Tony Dews. No, it is offensive assistant coaches. So we will talk to running back coach Tony Dews at noon via Zoom tomorrow. So hopefully we will be able to provide you some context on what this means for the rest of the running back room. Tough scene. All right. Enjoy the rest of your show. Let me rip one more person before we get out of here. Your podcast is BS, says Rockstars. Well, one, this isn't a podcast. This is a live streaming program that happens 5 days a week. I do have two podcasts, in fact, that they that 1 through A to Z that they pay me to do called the 615 Sessions. It's a very good podcast. And another one called The Install with Greg Cosell of NFL Films, which is a nationally acclaimed podcast. And I don't just say that because of me. I say that because Greg's the shit at what he does. And that podcast is also very good. They do podcast my radio show. Probably some of that is bullshit because it's 3 hours and I'm kind of a ridiculous person. And I can only be so serious for 3 hours a day. But that is a well-rated podcast as well. And the radio show does pretty well as far as terrestrial ratings are concerned too. So first of all, there's a podcast of this show, though, Rockstar. So if you want to go check out that podcast, you're more than welcome to. And if you would like to leave your idiot criticism somewhere, you can leave it in the comment section, but just make sure you do it with 5 stars. Hugs and kisses. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll see you.